Hey, this is Brian Leonard with WagerTalk.com, Wager Talk TV, and I'm going to talk about my big game breakout today. That'll be the Irish and Louisville. This is a third straight tough game for the Irish after facing Ohio State and Duke the past 2 weeks. Both of those games were decided in the final seconds, so Notre Dame may be running on fumes a little bit late in this one. Keep that in mind as they host USC next week. So, a sandwich situation, I don't know, but I'm not the sandwich guy. That would be Marco. But it is a situation right now where the Irish have really played some tough competition, and they've got another one coming up next week. This team has dominated the opposition in the passing game. They have a 181.83 passer rating while holding the opposition to 91.9. Once again, 181.3 for the Irish passer rating. The Irish defensive passer rating, 91.29. That's incredible. This team does dominate through the air. They have a 16-0 touchdown to interception ratio, while the defense has only allowed 3 touchdowns while intercepting 6 passes. If this game goes through the air, I want the Irish in this one. Louisville Irish play undefeated on the year, but they haven't really played a ranked team until now. They were fortunate last week to get that 13-10 victory over NC State. This hasn't been a very strong home field when you take a look at that over the years. They're 21-14 straight up at home the past 5 seasons, which isn't really a very good record when you're playing at home. They are 4-8-1 ATS as a home dog since 2017, so that hasn't been a good road either, as being the home dog. And we really like the way the Irish have dominated play through the year. And the Cardinals have a solid passing attack, but Notre Dame is much more tested. My strike point on this game was the Irish at -5.5. We're currently seeing 6.5. So I'm just leaning with the Irish here. Probably won't be a play for my clients. But if somehow this game goes down to 5.5 without a major injury for the Irish, I think that's a place where we're going to come in and strike. We like the Irish. We don't like the number. That happens a lot this late in the week. But just to lean on the Irish in this one.
Hey guys, Adam Trigger here, wagertalk.com. Big game breakdown for Friday is going to be Georgia Tech, Miami. And this game right here, I'll start with Georgia Tech because whenever a team loses the way Georgia Tech did last week to Bowling Green, sort of a shock result, a disaster result, if you will. I look to bet on them their next time out, but I also try to look back and say, okay, how'd that happen? What happened here? Was it a result of injury or something that might carry over? Or was it maybe just a little spot where they overlooked the team a little and they'll sort of return to what I expect them to be the following week? I think in this case, it's probably some of the latter. So Georgia Tech, they come off of a nice sort of upset win over Wake Forest. I think they were a 3.5 point dog in that game. A game they really controlled throughout. Wake Forest made it close late, but Georgia Tech sort of handled that game. And they had Miami on deck. So, Bowling Green at home, probably a game they thought they could maybe go through the motions and win. They, of course, did not. And I think they're being sort of, I don't know if the right term is penalized, but I have a feeling, I feel like the odds makers are just taking that loss to Bowling Green, that ugly result, sort of into account too much here, making them a 3 touchdown underdog against Miami. Or even where it is right now, 20.5. We'll call it 3 touchdowns. I just think it's maybe a little bit too much. Miami, on the other hand, you could argue that they're in a similar spot that Georgia Tech was last week. Now, they're not playing a no name. Georgia Tech's not a no name, but they certainly have bigger fish to fry coming up, going to North Carolina. And then they've got Clemson at home. So, maybe this is a spot where they get stuck in a little bit of a flat spot. I'm not saying they lose to Georgia Tech here, but I don't know that you get the sort of blowout effort from them, pedal to the metal all the way, start to finish, knowing that they can just kind of get their win and move on to 2 really big games. Haynes King for Georgia Tech, I still think he gets downgraded for that poor start to his career at Texas A&M. He was a guy I kind of talked about with A&M. I thought he'd play better after he got benched, came back in. He did for a little bit. And I've been impressed with him so far this year. I think he's played fine. I think the Georgia Tech offense has some playmakers. Their output so far in 5 games, 34, 48, 23, 30. and 27, which is pretty respectable. Now, Miami's defense is really good. That's probably the best one. Well, it's definitely the best one they've seen so far. Probably better than Louisville, but they're not. I don't know that they're going to come and just shut Georgia Tech out. And really, I think that's what we're looking for in this game. If you want to get to the Georgia Tech side, which I'm trying to make a case for here, I think we're ultimately looking for Georgia Tech being able to score some points, which I do think they can in this game. Miami, they've kind of only really faced one offense that can score at all. It was Texas A&M, and the final was 48-33. So to say that Georgia Tech is just going to not come out and score, I think would be a little bit incorrect. And of course, Haynes King was on one of those teams that played Miami last year, the Texas A&M team. So he's got a little bit of exposure, to the Canes. With all that being said, I think Georgia Tech plus the points is the right side in this game. I didn't make this a client play, but it's certainly something I'm kind of eyeing. If Miami ends up taking money and this gets pushed up to 21 and a half by tomorrow, by Saturday, I would probably have to consider it. Right now, it's probably just going to miss my card. But I would not be rushing to lay all those points with Miami. I just don't think it's the best spot and the best matchup to do so. So we'll call it Georgia Tech plus 20 and a half, shop around, big game breakdown.
Hey guys, Rob Vino here with today's big game breakdown in college football action. We're going to go late night Pac-12, soon to be reduced to Pac-2. Action with Arizona at USC. USC opened here 21 and a half, total of 72. They remained 21 and a half till about an hour before we came on to do this show here, down to minus 21 at this point in time. Some signs that quarterback Jaden Delora will start here for Arizona. He didn't play last week, but I'm going to look at the Arizona side here. Got it at 21 and a half. Obviously, you want that hook, but 21 still may have enough breathing room here, especially if Delora plays. Arizona hasn't lost a game by more than 7 points all season long. Now, both times that they were an underdog, they played 5 times. Twice they were an underdog, +9 in Starkville at Mississippi State. Last week, +20 at home against Washington, again without their starting quarterback. They lost by identical scores in those two games, 31-24, 7-point losses. And they had an uphill battle in each of those games. Against Mississippi State, they committed 5 turnovers. They lost the turnover margin battle 5-1. They were -4 in turnovers. They allowed Mississippi State 4 consecutive short fields in the first half. 4 straight turnovers, first half. Bulldogs started those drives on their own 41, just 59 yards away on their own 48, at midfield and on the Arizona 16. Despite giving Mississippi State all that field position in the first half, all on consecutive drives, Arizona was still able to hold off MSU, limit the damage, find a way to 24-24 at the end of regulation, and push that thing into overtime where they finally lost. Real good effort out of Arizona. Past editions of their defense would not have been able to do that. Last week, again, they play without Jaden Delora, and they only lose 31-24, hold Washington to 31 points. Very, very comparable in this situation is the Washington explosiveness on offense to what we're going to see out of USC here. Those two teams have just been dynamite as far as big plays go, high scoring totals go so far this season. But Arizona was able to limit them to 31 points. I would expect some of the same type of defense as they played last week. They went to, what used to be New England, I think actually started this against Peyton Manning back in 2003, 2004. They would go to, one of those soft umbrella type zones, force Peyton Manning to throw underneath and just make tackles. And that's what they did last week against Washington. Michael Penix Jr. and the Washington offense only had one play of 20 yards or more in that game. One play. And they've been racking those things up constantly throughout the season so far. But last week against that defense, Arizona accomplished what they set out to do. He went 30 for 40 in that game. Just to give you some context here, 30 for 40 passing, 75% completion, still threw for 363 yards. But it's the fact that Arizona made them march the field, didn't let them score, multiple explosive plays, which is obviously the way Caleb Williams and USC likes to score. So Perhaps. I know we're going to see the same style of defense here. I guess the question you would ask yourself, if there are concerns, is USC on the perimeter that much faster than Arizona? Are they going to run over the top of this defensive setup? Probably not. Washington's got first round wide receivers on their side as well, just as much speed. Is USC better at the point of attack? Do they pass protect better? Will they run the ball better? Probably not. Arizona didn't even sack Washington last week. I think they had 1 or 2 sacks in 40 pass attempts. So it's not like pressure was eating Michael Penix alive. So even if Caleb Williams has time, I'd expect the same type of results that you got from Penix in this game. Rush defense for Arizona has been really, really good so far this season. If you just take their 4 FBS opponents, throw Northern Arizona out of the equation, FCS team, and U of A is only allowing 122 rush yards per game. Now, USC this week, couple of quotes coming out of their camp, where they would like to be able to salt games away with the running game. Again, if they do that, if their run pass balance, play calling wise, goes a little heavier toward run here when they have a lead, probably helps you cover 21, 21 and a half, whatever you can get in this game. One thing that is apparent to me is that USC, and probably, I'm not going out on a limb saying this, USC just doesn't play the same type of defense that Washington does. Not that Washington's been great, because sometimes their offense scores too quick and the defense gets worn, but USC's defense they seem to take periods of time off throughout the game, build a lead, take time off. Doesn't really matter to them. They seem to know that Caleb Williams is going to get them points. I would say this. I think USC probably against 90% of the nation, maybe a little more, can score 42 points in any given game. So let's just assume that's the ceiling here and they get 42. You're going to need Arizona to get to, 23. If you only get 21 points, you get a push out of it. Let's say you got to get to 23. Can Arizona do that? I would think so against this defense, especially if Delora plays. The back door is always open. Jed Fish has this team playing hard. You're going to get 60 minutes worth of focus. Can't say the same thing about USC. So I'll try Arizona here. Like I said, I think I got the better number, but I think they're all gone. So we'll say, for sake of the show, Arizona plus 21 here against USC.
Talked to my clients last couple of weeks when I had Akron. They may disagree, but we're going to head back to the MAC. As I was a 1985 graduate of Akron University, I always spent more time on the MAC than most other players, people who are looking to bet, and it's worked out pretty well over the years. But Akron hurt me the last 2 weeks, and no, we won't be using the Zips again today. The Huskies have long been a powerhouse in the Mid-American Conference, but unfortunately, they've struggled under Thomas Hammock. He's posted an 18 of 31 marks since coming to DeKalb, and he's only had 1 winning year. But I kind of like this team a little bit this year. I know they played a difficult schedule so far. They were on the road. They had to go to Boston College, Toledo, and Nebraska. Pretty strong home teams there in that regard. And they hang in pretty well, although they didn't get the victories. But despite the 4 straight losses, this team has put up some pretty good numbers overall, which is why they've been road favorites in this installation of this game. Motivation will not be a problem for Northern Illinois here, as they lost at home in their finale last year to Akron 44-12. They were a 10-point favorite in that game, and they lost their last game at home 44-12 to the Zips. Akron's had high hopes since Joe Moorhead signed last year. And in his short tenure, he has posted a combined 3-14 overall record with just 1 victory coming against an FBS program. That's right. The only Division I win they had last year, that 44-12 win over these Huskies. So we've got a team in Northern Illinois that definitely has something to play for. And you got an Akron team who is basically played back-to-back games they go to overtime on, should have won both of them, lost them both. That's going to put some rough seas in their sails there. I don't think this team is going to be coming out in this one with very good positive vibes. They had the last 2, they blew the last 2, and this team has circled this game. Give me Northern Illinois here, minus the points over my alma mater in Akron, and hopefully I get off the Zips snide here for a little bit.
Adam Trigger here, wagertalk.com, with one of my 4% college football client plays for this weekend. And that's going to be on Louisville plus 6.5. So I'm going to piggyback off some of the stuff said earlier in the show, where I agree, where I disagree, and how I ultimately got to the bet on Louisville. I agree with the fact I'm not so much worried about it being like a sandwich letdown, like bad spot for Notre Dame, because I don't really think that Notre Dame's like it is going to be let down here. It's another massive game, prime time, huge game for them. So certainly no letdown spot. I will acknowledge they play USC next week, but again, that's really not what's putting me on the Louisville side. Where I will acknowledge the spot is it's difficult to give a max effort every single week. And we've already seen a top effort against Ohio State, game Notre Dame probably should have won. It took a big time effort to beat Duke. So can they give that effort here, a third straight week in a row and have it pan out to a winning cover? Maybe, but I think there's a possibility they don't. Now, Brian pointed out the Notre Dame pass attack has been really good, super efficient, 16 touchdowns, no interceptions, but they also haven't taken a ton of chances. That's somewhere that I'll sort of look for, look at in this game is Notre Dame going to come back with what they've done the past couple weeks and play that grind out game that should have won the Ohio State game and ultimately got them a win against Duke? Or are they going to realize that they didn't really do enough and start to open up the pass attack? If they open it up, well, maybe Hartman takes more chances and maybe he does start to throw interception number 1 or 2 or turn it over against what is a pretty good Louisville defense. This is a Louisville defense that dominated Indiana, played well against NC State, holding them to 10 points last week. So, if all of a sudden Notre Dame comes out and starts throwing the ball all over the place, they could turn it over a couple of times. If they stick to what's, I guess, quote unquote, worked for them, then I don't know that they just come out and pull away from this Louisville team. Notre Dame has a fantastic offensive line. They run it well, but they run it frequently. And I'd almost say they've been a little bit predictable with the way they've run the ball and how often they ran the ball, specifically last week against Duke. So can they lean on their offensive line for yards, move the chain, so on and so forth? I think they probably can. But is that going to produce a result that blows out this Louisville team on their home field? And I would lean toward that not happening. So as far as the Louisville side is concerned, I think the offense is capable. I think Plummer is a capable quarterback and that they can move the ball enough here, maybe similar to what Duke did offensively. And just what it comes down to with Louisville, pretty good balance here. Good on both sides of the ball. I think that Louisville can hang in this game. They certainly profile similar to Duke, and it's priced right around the same range. Of course, Duke was at home as well. Where I think they could hang around, and Notre Dame. I just don't know that they've strayed too much from what they've done the last couple weeks. Seems to me like if they were going to sort of open up the playbook, it makes more sense to do it next week against USC, which is considered to be a little bit tougher matchup. Here, I see Notre Dame kind of going in, grinding out their result here, and for me, it's tough to see that happening by more than a touchdown. So I think Louisville hangs around in this game. It's a huge spot for them too. Remember, if we're going to talk about the spot, this game against Notre Dame being in the primetime slot makes it a massive game for Louisville. Notre Dame's got another massive game on deck. So I'm going to call for a good one here. I think Louisville covers, gets the money whether they win this one or not.
Best bet here for the show. We're going to look to the Sun Belt Conference. Arkansas State at Troy. Opening line here. Troy was minus 16.5. 53 total. Current line sits at 15.5 and 52. We're going to play over in this contest. And in part, due to the quarterback switch that Arkansas State head coach Butch Jones made a couple of weeks ago, he switched to true freshman dual threat quarterback Jalen Raynor, somewhat due to injury. I mean, JT Shrout, the number 1 quarterback, got hurt. But at the time when Raynor got the start, head coach Butch Jones inserted him, declared him the starter. And it's been all downhill ever since offensively for the Arkansas State Red Wolves. Yes, the defensive competition has been poor. They've played Southern Miss. They've played Massachusetts. Obviously, Arkansas State, the damage that they've done is added to the poor defensive numbers of those squads. But let's look at what they've done the last couple of weeks with this talented true freshman. Against Southern Miss, 449 total yards and 37 points, and 44 points. And against Massachusetts, 556 and 52 points. So combination here, 89 points the last 2 weeks. In those two games, Arkansas State has averaged 182.5 on the ground, 308 through the air, 7.5 yards per play. Now, again, this is a significant step up in class defensively when you're facing Troy. But let's look at Troy for a minute here and a couple of reasons why we still want to play over in this game. First off, Troy comes in here as a 15.5-point favorite, and they're off 3 consecutive, very tough games. Could there be a slight letdown here out of Troy defensively? Very well could be. Started this 3-week stretch at home against James Madison, where they lost a 2-point heartbreaker 16-14. Came back, played home against Western Kentucky in a very tough battle. And then last week, got into a rock fight with Georgia State, where they finally broke loose in the second half. I think that game was 7-6 at halftime. Good competition at the line of scrimmage in that game. So defensively, if they have somewhat of a letdown here, doesn't have to be a total letdown, somewhat of a letdown, I have to figure Arkansas State will score their share of points. Detroit offense could be the best thing in our favor here because it's going up against the Arkansas State defense, which has been a sieve. And I would expect Troy to have a field day here from an offensive standpoint. Last week, they finally got up to 28 points. They've kind of been hovering around that number the last couple of weeks, but I would expect to finally see an explosion. You know, where Troy is concerned, their offensive output yardage-wise has not necessarily matched their point production. The point production seems to come in low so far this year as opposed to what they're gaining on offense. They've had a tendency to stall themselves out, make mistakes at crucial times that don't lead to points or lead to stopping them from scoring points. However, the 4 teams that they played before this, I mean, I just rattled off the last 3. Remember, before that, they played Kansas State. This has not been an easy schedule for Troy. This has got to be a sort of a relief here to look across and see this defense, a defense that allows 161 yards on the ground. And Troy can obviously go to, at least as the lead option of their offense, they can go to the running game with Kamani Vidal, their top running back here, a guy that they often say they want to feed even more. I would expect him to have a big day. For those who have seen him run, he's obviously an established, experienced, very good runner. He probably opens things up here for Gunnar Watson in the passing game. In this passing game, I just talked about how their numbers just don't add up to how many points they've been scoring. But Gunnar Watson and company, they're averaging 288 passing yards per game. It's almost 300 a game against those 4 FBS opponents. Figure they can shred Arkansas State here. Troy State, for what it's worth, if we want to look at big play or explosiveness, they have scored 1 touchdown from outside the red zone in each of the last 4 games. So they've got the capability. I think the total yardage numbers will be good, and they'll finally correlate to what Troy puts on the scoreboard here. The final key to this is the total itself. I've been talking a lot the last couple of weeks about how we've been able to take advantage about some numbers that have been hung totals-wise, more due to perception than the matchup or what's going on the field. And here we get another one. We get a total that's been bet down actually to 52. In my estimation, Troy is capable of 38 without question in this game. And in order to get over 52, have to get Arkansas State to 17, a team that plays with fast tempo, a team that's been moving the ball very, very well. I'm not asking them to do a ton, asking them to get to 17. I think this game hits 55 or better rather easily because Troy could get into the 40s here if they start ripping off some big gains against this Arkansas State defense. So for me, the best bet this week for the show is Arkansas State at Troy over 52 points.